This episode of the GC Sunscast is brought to you by our Patreon donors, Old Soul, Jack's Dad, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, and James Wood. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/GC Sunscast and donate. We are $6 shy of our $100 goal to introduce a call-in service and allow you, the fans, to join us and interact with our discussions. If you can't donate, that's fine. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share with friends and family. Now, let's get on with the show.
First win of 2019 in inspiring fashion. Siren sounds. It was a robbery. But they were their own worst enemy for 3 quarters. 7-19 they picked to win by 3 points.
Hello and welcome to the GC Sunscast, the Gold Coast Suns show by fans for fans. I'm your host Shane, and joining me as always is Tom. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Oh, thanks, Shane, and what a great week it is for Gold Coast Suns.
It is, and that little clip there just showing the media finally getting excited about the Suns, but we'll touch on that a bit later. First, let's just put the call out. We are going live. If you're listening live, we urge you to jump on the chat and interact with us and other Suns fans. Let us know who your best on ground was for the game against Fremantle and what your highlight was, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But let's get on to the news, Tom.
Yeah, sure. Plenty to go through, really, isn't there? We've got we had a NEAFL practice match, which unfortunately the Suns lost. We had an academy game, which against the Northern Territory, which we won. But I'll let you elucidate our fans as to our big news during the week with a big re-signing.
Yes, Alex Sexton re-signed until 2022. So that's great news for Suns fans. A key player, especially in the last 2 weeks and last year. Sexton's currently leading the Coleman medal for the Suns with 8 goals, is it?
I'll claim a little credit there because you asked me who the leading goal scorer was, and I said not Sexton. He's leading the comp.
He is. So it's great to re-sign him, lock him away for another 4 years, and it just shows a really united and a bunch of blokes that just really want to be together and play footy together. So we're really starting to see that go through in the Suns footy, and we'll talk about that a bit more. The other big news that's come out today is for those that are fans of the NEAFL and trying to keep up with the Gold Coast Suns NEAFL side, NEAFL TV on YouTube is going to be happening this year. You'll be able to witness or live stream every single NEAFL game on YouTube. So if you head over to their channel, NEAFL TV at YouTube, you should be able to watch pretty much every single Suns NEAFL game live, and I'm sure you can probably watch it back on delay as well.
Yes, you can. In the past, they sort of cherry-picked games, so sometimes you'd be flabbergasted that the NEAFL game wasn't on if you were looking forward to watching it live. But, they're getting the broadcasting for the NEAFL's pretty decent quality, and it's a one camera panning back and forth up the ground, so you can't expect a lot. But they do a great deal with what they've got, much like what we do. So some of it's a bit ad lib, and they have their moments. But their game on the weekend was not streamed. However, the academy game, because it's a part of the NAB League, which is the renamed TAC Cup. First 5 rounds feature NEAFL teams and Northern Territory and Tassie, and we played against the Northern Territory and flogged them.
Yeah, we did. But before we talk about more NEAFL, let's jump into the academy results. You've got the academy results from the weekend. Do you want to discuss some of what's happened in the Suns Academy?
Yes, absolutely. Well, as I said, we played the Northern Territory and we beat them by 82-38. That scoreline probably flatters the Suns a little bit because we certainly did. The boys certainly did everything in the first half. They were leading by quite a lot at half time. The Thunder feature a fellow by the name of Maurice Rioli, which was pretty scary watching him in action. He's probably got a ways to go yet before he gets there, but yet another Rioli in the pipeline. They also have a guy named Jungfer who actually trained with us over the summer as a bit of a part of his development. If we can get another crack at him training with us and potentially even signing him because he was the best on the ground. However, our players were brilliant, and there are some very familiar names among the best on ground. Crossley, Ashton, younger brother of Goober. Ethan Dawson, younger brother again, and probably the best defender was a young fellow by the name of Corey Joyce, who is Jesse Joyce's younger brother. But doubtless the best players on the ground were Connor Bedarick, and the best forward was Josh Gore. This team is brimming with talent. Maybe just getting the one academy player in the draft this previous year will see a bit of a backlog of players come through. There'll be 8 or 10 players vying for allies spots. Really, really encouraging start to the season by the young blokes.
Yeah, it's good to see the academy boys coming along. They're really coming into our own, and we're starting to see the fruits of the labour with a number of academy boys now playing in the Suns. All right, well, let's discuss the NEAFL side now. The NEAFL game was against Brisbane at 10 a.m. at Metricon Stadium on Sunday. Brisbane defeated Gold Coast 14-13, 97 to Gold Coast Suns 7-5, 47. So it sounds like a bit of a one-sided contest, but it was actually a tale of two halves, let's say. The Gold Coast Suns really dominated that first half, and then sort of injuries hit, and Brisbane got back in front and just dominated the rest of the game, didn't they?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the Suns led at 39-20 at half time. So to give up that kind of score, the explanation, of course, is that 3 Suns players were injured in the first half. So they did well to get to that half-time lead. Also, the Lions kicked 2-8 in the first half. So they turned that around and started kicking straighter. Look, the Suns' back line is, Jack Leslie, Caleb Graham and Dirk Conan. So it hasn't changed. They've got these 3 monsters in the back line and they really dominated. But obviously the Lions have got this kind of list right now where they've got 40 AFL players on their list and they've got a few rookies. So any time the NEAFL team goes into the 2 clash, you expect a big, strong, able-bodied opponent, and we were able to arm wrestle them through 3 quarters, and then they just kicked away. So, good effort. It'll be the Suns players will be better for the hit out because the Lions played 2 practice matches prior, and this is our first proper hit out. We had a hit out against PBC last week and smashed it by 20 goals. So this is the real test for the boys. As I said, the injuries just limited the rotation on the bench, and we got run over in the end. But that'll change. The injuries weren't significant; they were precautionary. So some players will miss time, but not much, and other players won't miss anything, hopefully. So, all good news all around, I think, with 2 wins out of 3 for the 3 grades.
Yeah, so the surprising thing out of this game as well was Ben King kicked 2 goals, so he was playing down forward. Why do you think that was, Tom?
Oh, no, there's no place for him down back. You've got Jack Leslie's vying for a starting key position spot. Caleb Graham's been drafted into the senior list, and Dirk Conan's playing out of his skin to try and get drafted as a mature ager. So they're the incumbents. So they could have shipped. I think in the practice match last week they shifted Graham forward, and he did a few good things. He's not a noted goal kicker or forward player. He's a very good player, they're trying to develop those younger guys, including King, into key position players, whether they play forward or back. So teaching a bit of forward craft to King, which is sort of an extension of what he did in his final draft year, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. King's very versatile. I think he's probably going to be a defender for the Suns in the senior side. So it's probably also a fact that we probably want to see him playing defence in the NEAFL, honing his craft. I'm not sure we really need another tall forward, but, if he needs to fit in the side and play a bit of down forward, then so be it. Well, that probably wraps us up for the NEAFL. Anything else you wanted to say, or should we move on to the injury news?
No, the NEAFL, despite the result, it's good, very good news. We've got some depth, and we didn't really have any injuries to come out of this game. So we're onward and upward. We have players coming back. So with the NEAFL starting up this week, it'll be interesting at the selection table to see who's actually available.
All right. Well, let's move on to the injury news now. So Ellis is injured from that NEAFL game. He suffered a high ankle sprain and will miss 4 to 6 weeks. So unfortunately, bad news for Ellis. He's already missed a massive chunk of the preseason with a groin injury. It's going to be hard for him to get back into the side. We probably won't see him again until up around the bye period, by the time he does his rehab and then builds up a bit of match fitness. Who else? We've got McLennan, who suffered bone bruising from a hyperextension. However, that was precautionary, that he was just pulled off for the rest of the game, and he looks to be a test, at least to play NEAFL next week. George Holland-Smith was a late withdrawal from the senior side, and due to back spasms, I think. So he's a test as well. They're just going to monitor him. And Corbett is ready to return and join the main group. So give him a couple of weeks of match fitness in the NEAFL and building back up. And we should be seeing him running around in the seniors in about 3 or 4 weeks' time.
Potentially. Yeah, I think the thing that the only thing that's going to keep guys like that. I mean, we've got a lot of players returning from injury. Corbett's one, Schoenfeld, Lemons, and it's only 3 weeks potentially from Ainsworth and Rankin to come back. So there's a lot of forwards in there. So depends on which way we go. I think that's really when we're going to see some horses for courses, because if you're choosing between Corbett, Lemons, Ainsworth and Rankin for a forward spot, it really depends on the opposition, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. Sorry, my voice is a bit croaky today. A big weekend watching the Suns and cheering them on. So let's get into the talk about the Gold Coast Suns versus Fremantle. So, Gold Coast Suns defeated Fremantle 7 goals 19-61 to Freo's 8 goals 10-58. Now, it was a huge game. Just great. First of all, let's talk about the atmosphere at Metricon. It was the first game that we've been to this year. It's also the first game that we've actually met in person. So that was good to catch up, have a couple of beers before the game. You want to jump in here with anything, Tom?
Yeah, actually, my first time at Metricon Stadium since the redevelopment. So brought back memories, though. I was a regular attendee at Carrara in the 80s and early 90s. So, it's a lot's changed. I've been living in a state for a long time. So, it was really great. I was a little bit shocked at seeing the crowd figure. I thought it was actually well up there, but I'm not really accustomed to reading the crowd numbers from just being at the ground. But there was a lot of noise. And I know that there are games where it was very, very quiet. So, 10,000, it seemed like a lot more than that to me.
Yeah, I was listening to the radio while watching the game, so I can get an update with actual players and a better perspective of what's going on the field. And, even they mentioned that it sounded like there was 35,000 people there. So they were impressed that the Sun supporters were cheering. To be honest, it doesn't happen very much. I've been to quite a few games at Metricon over the last few years especially, and I went to a lot of games in their early years. And yeah, it didn't really, the crowd just didn't get involved, especially not the way they did on Sunday. It's really good to hear that passion, to hear that support, and that's what we want to hear. And even Harbrow came out after the game in a post-match interview saying just how much it spurred the players on, so they can hear us. And it's really good for fans that do go along to the footy to be loud, be proud, and cheer the boys on, because it does get down there and it does make a difference.
Oh, big time! I mean, you were up in the stands, and I was on the fence, and they're right there, and players can hear exactly. They can hear your conversations. Like you, I didn't listen to the radio. I actually had a Dockers fan come and sit next to me, and he was a lovely bloke, and he was really supportive of the Suns because he's a long-suffering Dockers supporter. He knows exactly what we're going through. And we were just quite amazed that all of the Dockers fans at the game, they were just really respectful. It's probably the best opponent you could have. None of these morons from other clubs who are, especially the ones with Suns memberships who come and have the real club that they support, and they whack on their whatever jersey. This was I really want to make that point, that this was a great group of people, and I think it's a good sign that people are coming over for a holiday on the Gold Coast from the Western Australian clubs and really enjoying the facilities. And this guy was high-fiving me at the end saying, oh, yeah, we lost, and, I don't care because, we're going to go all right this year, and I've got a week holiday on the Gold Coast. So, yeah, that was an interesting, different perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking about the game for a moment, I mean, we could talk all day about off-field and how we went at the game. I mean, like you said, you enjoyed sitting on the boundary line, getting really into it. I usually prefer to watch from a distance so I can capture everything in, and from a more strategic, tactical point of view. But I'm looking to change things up. I'm going to try and sit somewhere else next game, and see what it's like there. I've done the general admission down at the Sun Screamers, and been around those that just sit behind the goals and they're all about cheering and waving flags, getting right into it. So everyone's got their own unique, different way of cheering and enjoying a game of footy. So that's really interesting. But let's jump into the actual football. Now, Gold Coast, I believe Gold Coast should have won this by a huge amount. And the same as last week, we should have won last week. It was our skill errors and our decision-making that let us down so often, and it's done it again. Now, that's a good thing. It shows that the Suns have potential to improve on top of what they're doing already, and, we can kick a winning score. We kicked 19 behinds, so that shows our inaccuracy in front of goal, but also our potential. We could have kicked 19 goals, 7.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot bigger margin, and we were just peppering. I mean, I think 75% of the game was played in the Suns' forward half. Yeah.
Look, I've got a slightly different kind of approach on that to you, and I'll just very briefly go through a couple of figures for you. So we had 5 players who had 80 to 100% disposal efficiency. And I know you'll go through this in a bit more detail later, but those guys it wasn't like they were any slouches. They averaged about 20 possessions each over the 5. So, and there were others who were in the 70s and high 60s, which is acceptable. Then there were guys who were lower, and they're generally the goal kickers and stuff. So I'll just give you a couple of figures here. For goal kicking accuracy, you've got David Swallow had a goal missed and had a goal tipped at the line, and it was going through. He also had 2 goal assists, so you can't really say he was poor at goal kicking. You had Jack Martin had 6 shots at goal for 1 goal. So he was a real culprit. Peter Wright had 3 shots at goal and missed them all. The Koshas had 4 shots at goal, missed them all. And Sexton had 10 shots at goal and got 4 goals. So those are the culprits, but they're having a go. And I don't know if it's poor kicking or it's in their heads, but if you also look at the score worm, you've got you've got, let's say, 10 minutes to go in the first half, and then in the first 10 minutes of the second half, there's like 10 straight behind. And it doesn't get any better until halfway through the final quarter. So that's the period of the game where everyone had the yips.
Yeah. Except Fremantle, they kicked 3 goals in that third quarter, and that's essentially what put them up and gave them any chance. Besides that, Fremantle were pretty bang average themselves, and I was confident of that last week. The media train tried to drag Fremantle up, but in reality, they've won just as many away games as the Suns in the last 2 or 3 years. So they're a different beast when they're playing away from Subiaco, or I think in this case it's Optus Stadium now, I think. So, I mean, yeah, but back to your point with disposal efficiency, so many of the players were terrible, not just the Suns, Freo as well. And yes. I was hearing on the commentary, they were saying that's due to the sun. Transferring the ball from the shadows out into the sun seemed to be a bit tricky for players. And I noticed, especially during that second and third quarter, how the Suns would transfer the ball from one end to the other, but they'd go along the outside, the fat end, in the sun, and you try to stay out of that shade. And I actually remember noticing that a number of years ago as well. So it does seem to be a thing at Metricon Stadium in the day where the players are aware to try to keep the ball in the sun than in the shadows. Do you think that's having a big impact with the disposal efficiency?
Yeah, I think it does, but it's not. It doesn't explain the whole thing. It's part of it. It explains drop marks. It explains players losing the ball in the sun. I mean, I was watching myself on TV, and I could tell it was me because I had a big wide arm up covering my eyes so I could watch the game. So if I've got to shield my eyes just to watch the game, imagine the players. They don't have that luxury really. But yeah, to me, I think that the reason why a lot of players, I mean, look at Sean Darcy, he had a great contest. And he had 16.7% disposal efficiency. So, that's for a guy who only gets the ball 6 times. He's had 4 clangers and 1 incorrect disposal and 1 correct disposal. Well, not correct disposal, you know what I mean, like 1 effective disposal out of 6. So he's a passenger apart from getting hit outs. That you can't afford to carry a ruckman anymore in this modern game. Compared to Witts, who was dynamic, he still had 50%. You can't expect the big fellas to be perfect, but yeah, I reckon pressure on the ball. Fremantle had a tremendous amount of pressure acts, and our guys were almost out on their feet at times trying to get the ball back or trying to limit the run of the other team. So both of the game plans were very negating, and that led to some pretty ugly footy at times.
Yeah. Well, it was our young guns that again stood up this week. You mentioned pressure acts just then. Jack Bowes had 25 pressure acts. That was one of the game high for the Suns players. Charlie Ballard had 100% disposal efficiency on a dirty day for disposals, and he had 16 disposals. So it was these young players that really stood up and provided the base and the foundation for a few of the more senior heads to prevail. I mean, I think it's universal that Harbrow was best on ground, but we'll get to that later. I mean, Swallow had 1 goal, 30 disposals, 16 contested possessions, and 9 clearances. He was just as influential in that game as what Nat Fyfe is, and Nat Fyfe is a superstar.
But I guess normally Swallow would go to Fyfe, and that would really take the edge off Swallow's performance. and not necessarily off Fifes, because there's a fair sort of discrepancy between the size. It was Jack Bowes who played on Fife for probably half the game.
And Fiorini on the other half. And they were both sensational.
Yeah, and every now and then Miller would turn up and get in, as you predicted. It wasn't for the whole game, but every now and then Miller would just get in his face, because there's a huge difference in size between the two of them. But probably one of the key moments of the game was when Miller got Fife for holding the ball, and you didn't see Fife that influential after that for a while. So, no one wants to get pinged for holding the ball, but if you're going to take their best player out of the middle of the contest and get a free kick against him and really turn the momentum, you've got a real psychological advantage, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the Freo midfielders that we discussed last week, that would be the key to us winning. A lot of them were nullified. I think the only one that really had a big impact might have been Brad Hill. Langdon was okay, but he wasn't as damaging as what he had been in the week before. And let's look at the metres gained stat as well, because so many Suns are up there with that metres gained. The ball just was constantly moving. And it was Harbrow and Weller up the top there, Martin as well.
Yep.
So many others as well. I think we had about 6 or 7 that had over 450 metres gained. So
and we're bouncing the ball again. Remember a few years ago when Saad was the bounce of the ball master. He wasn't that great at disposal efficiency.
No.
We lost him, and we kind of lost this ability to just take a run.
Well, we've got Murdoch and Hanley standing up now to do that.
Yeah.
Murdoch was a bit hesitant at times, but if he had got on his bike, he probably could have really had an impact going forward.
Yeah, he flashed potential, didn't he? He really had a couple of set plays there where he was the guy who was really getting the chain going and or backing up as well. So sometimes the ball came back to him. I'm really excited about Murdoch because I don't think we've seen much more than the tip of the iceberg, and he had a reasonably good game. Good in all areas. You probably like him to see him have a bit more of the ball. Maybe he's not quite getting in there as much, but in a game like this, he did his job.
Yeah, and I thought Hanley stood up and did quite a good job as well. Not as influential as normal, but he still played well. And you were telling me it was actually the anniversary of the death of his brother, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were times when I saw Hanley, when I watched it again, the times where I saw Hanley and he wasn't his usual self, and then he seemed to have patches where he'd really go hard, and then other times where he was a bit indecisive. And I didn't think it was Hanley at 100%, but still Hanley at 60% was still good. I think we're going to see games where Hanley's going to be the one to tear things apart. I've said this ever since we started this podcast, that we've never really seen Hanley and Harbrow in a game together, really both busting it apart. And the day we see that, we're going to beat another team by 50 points.
And we've got Weller doing the same thing now as well. And Jack Martin stood up. He probably had one of his best games ever for the Suns. A little inaccurate with his kicking. I think he had around 50% disposal efficiency. But when he did connect and get it going, he was influential, and he kick-started that set of goals in the last quarter, which eventually got the Suns up for the win.
Yeah, he did. His goal-kicking accuracy was 16%, which is just atrocious. But at the same time, it was the goal that counted that he did kick. So, you can't... You can criticise him for this and that. I think one thing's for sure, the umpires do not like him. I don't know why. Maybe because he's just got that extra sensory ability where he just goes in and grabs the ball and does these amazing things. They should like him for that, but maybe they think he flirts with the rules a bit. I don't know, but it seemed like every time there was a marginal call, it went against him. And he by now he's just like, well, you've only given me one Brownlow vote ever, and he certainly deserved a lot more.
Or maybe the umpires are just as bad as the commentators and don't actually know what the Suns players' names are.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. They probably thought it was Tuke Miller or something. That's certainly. I even heard one of the commentators call Sean Lemons Callum Archie. If anyone knows where Callum is, we'd love to know, but no one cited him for a while. But it was Sean Lemons in the stand, not Callum Archie, as Dwayne Russell called. But no, look. Martin's in a contract year, and he's copping a bit of flack from left and right. He's been really good. I think people have just noticed his mistakes because he doesn't make that many, and he's sort of been, a bit rusty. And so because you see him get the ball, like he took 9 marks. That's just phenomenal. He's not the biggest player, and 2 of them were contested marks. I thought that figure would be higher, to be honest. And he took 3 marks inside 50. You'd normally take those 3 marks inside 50 to the bank as 3 goals, but he kicked a goal that got us going and got us believing, and that goal came from nothing. When he filled 6 Freo players into rushing to the sideline, and he just swiveled on a dime and had all the time in the world to bang it through the middle, and the crowd just went completely spazzed, didn't they?
They did. So the Suns dominated that game, it's fair to say. Just we didn't get the result on the scoreboard. We've covered the kicking efficiency. Let's look at what they did do, right? Yeah, they seem to... I don't think we won the centre clearances. I think Fremantle still won, but we did win stoppage clearances and contested possessions. Basically...
Sorry, other way around. We pretty much halved it. I will tell you this. At 3/4 time, you were right. They were killing it at centre clearances, but we started winning them in the final quarter. And for some reason, they started winning stoppages at the end. I think probably Witts was just knackered, and Witts also copped a football to the groin, which happened right in front of me. Did you see that bit?
No, I didn't.
Oh, the last 6 or 8 minutes, he was out on his feet. He was barely able to compete in the ruck. He didn't win a stoppage after that. He stayed in the game because he's a good player and he's a captain, but he was... It was when Peter Wright was going for his goal. So yeah, he was bent over and he was a long way from the bench, so he wasn't getting any respite. The poor fella. Huge kudos to him because he kept playing. But yeah, look, the centre clearances they were going Freo's way. And then they started going the Suns' way. We don't have exact breakdowns or anything, but Peter Wright played a lot more in the ruck than you'd normally expect, and he just didn't have the figures for it. But yeah, I think Freo have got 2 of the better ruckmen.
Yeah, the first quarter, with about, I think, 2 minutes into the first quarter, they were talking on the radio as I was listening that Witts was off the ground, and they were worried there was some sort of injury, and immediately... Right. Worst case scenario jumped into my head. I thought, there we go. There's our season. Our most influential player's gone. Who are we going to use to ruck? We can't use Peter Wright for the whole game. This is terrible. Thankfully, Witts did get it back out there. He did get a bit of a warning for coming on a bit late in that centre square in the first quarter. But the important thing is he's fine and he can play footy. But yes,
look, Sean Darcy's a big boy. He's the same weight as Witts. He's probably 4 inches shorter, 3 inches shorter. He's a big boy, and he was knocking the stuffing out of Witts at certain times. But Witts just kept coming back. They in the end they halved it, and not many ruckmen can actually halve a head-to-head hit out. And Rory Lobb was going in a lot against Witts, so. I think that was just precautionary. They brought him off because he'd just been, slogging away, and it was a bit back and forward too. So you get the big fella in the sun running back and forward, and Peter Wright actually got the tap down for Tuke Miller to get that ugly looking left-footed goal that got us going. So that wasn't a bad period for us at all.
Yeah, I thought we've already touched on our rebound with the intercepts and defenders. And that's another thing. I just thought our defence held up so well, being able to get the ball and rebound. I think that helped with Fremantle's sort of extra tall forward line. They seem to be playing more up the ground anyway, so I think the Suns' zone defense really assisted us there. Any other strategic observations you made during that game?
Same. On the same subject you're talking about, the back line was incredible. You've got Collins running up and down the ground, taking marks left, right, and centre. You've got Jack Homps choosing his moments a bit. Homps was sort of more playing the Rory Thompson role, where he didn't get a lot of the ball, but he certainly took a few intercept marks and had a lot of 1%ers. And for his 100th game, didn't disgrace himself. But Jesse Joyce, he gets, I don't know exactly what time it was that we knew Hall-on-Smith. We had the rumour, we thought it was Hanley that was out, but we had the rumour that a player was going to be a late scratching and Joyce was in. But that's not the best preparation for a game of AFL football. And he didn't have the greatest game, but he had some key moments in the game. I was really proud of him because it was potentially going to be a disaster for him to have to come in at the last minute and not really be coming in as sort of a direct swap. So there were players moving around, and he by the end of the game he orchestrated that final drive where we've eventually got the ball to David Swallow. So a big mention to Jesse Joyce because he got the ball out on the sort of out on the sideline and he switched it, and I was hoping we'd be switching the ball a lot more in this particular game, which Freo were doing to great effect, and he switched it and it just went through the hands, beautiful lead up all the way to kicking it to the captain because he's the one who's going to get the goal. So yeah, big shout out to him. And Ballard, quick stat about Charlie Ballard, last year he had the worst disposal efficiency by a foot in the AFL I think it was for players who played 10 games or more. So for him to get 100% disposal efficiency is a big effort for him, and it came off only one mark, and normally he's making a lot of marks. So his kicking in general play has improved out of sight.
All right, well, let's move on to our What a Performance moment, a new segment here on the GC Sunscast.
Lockie Weller, what a performance!
So, what was your highlight for the game? Mine would have been the Sam Collins mark at the end. There were so many moments we could have chosen, but just that Sam Collins mark, the irony of him taking a mark against his former side who let him go a year and a half ago for not being up to AFL standard. And he comes through, saves the game for the Suns. It's been bandied about as being Leo Barry-esque. Probably not quite that level, but it's certainly up there, especially for me. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, that one was up there. There's half a dozen moments in the game where I just thought, gee, how good are these guys going? Because as we said earlier, it should have been a much bigger margin because the Suns were that much better. But no, my moment was just, I mentioned it before. Jack Martin, out of a clearance of all things, picks up the ball, and none of them could get near him because he just wanted to wheel around and kick the goal. And we were 17 points down, and he kicks that goal, and suddenly it's all possible. So, that was just a brilliant moment. But, there were half a dozen I could choose.
It suddenly
as I mentioned, the tap down from Wright to Miller for him to get that ugly left foot goal in the first quarter was a thing of beauty. Their best mates and came up through the juniors together. So good to see a bit of hit outs to advantage and a goal. Apparently, we've been scoring in these first two games. We've been scoring a lot of goals from stoppages in the forward 50, which has always been a weakness. So little moments, and they all count, don't they?
They do. Well, we need to hurry up, Tom. You keep going over. We've got about 5 minutes left. Let's wrap up the best on ground. For me, it was Harborough with the 3 votes, Swallow with the 2 votes, and I'm giving Collins the 1 vote. So very much the eye-catching performances for me. What about you?
Yeah, I could have named 10 players. I'll give Martin 1 point for all the good things he did, and it's a dead heat between Harbrow and Bowes, but I'm going to give Harbs the 2 points because Bowes was brilliant on Fife. He still picked up a bunch of possessions and did a lot with it, but his negating of Fife and his just general play all around the ground. He's so good this year, Bowes. He's just fantastic. I just think he's going to be one of the best players we've ever had.
Well, we also didn't do the best on ground votes last week, so let's just recap what they were. For me, it was Swallow with the 3 votes, Sexton with the 2 votes, and Bowes with the 1 vote. What were yours, Tom?
Yeah, I love those guys' efforts. I gave Sexton 1 point, and I had to give Tuke Miller 2 points because he was just in everything. But to me, the best on ground was Braden Fiorini. He wasn't so great this week. He still played his role, but last week he was just amazing. Another player who I'm really excited about.
All right. Well, we don't have much time left, unfortunately, to go over the Bulldogs game in depth. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you in 1 sentence, Tom, tell us what the Suns need to do to beat the Bulldogs.
Yeah, we again, like with Freo, we need to be able to withstand their big midfield. And I think a few weeks ago we showed we can. So I'm not worried about this game. I think it'll be close. We've got the game to take it right up to them. It's a different beast, and we go down to Melbourne again. So yep, I reckon Suns, and I'm gonna call it 12 points.
Okay, well, it's been a combined total of 14 points in our last 2 losses to them. That is including the JLT this year and the game in Ballarat last year. I pretty much agree. I think our biggest concern with the Bulldogs is stopping their midfield. Bontempelli, McRae, Dunkley, these blokes, McLean as well, they're very dangerous and we need to find a way to nullify them. But we found a way to do it against the almighty Fremantle midfield, according to the media. So hopefully we can get away with it. Now, just to finish up, we've put out the questions for listeners. We got a couple of responses back. The first, Fat Pizza, says Harbrow was his best on ground and the Swallow goal at the end was his highlight. So totally agree with that. And the other one was one of our Patreon donors, Jack's dad, responded saying the Twitter response to Matthew Lloyd from Tony Cochrane was his favourite moment. So tops to that. I mean, Matty Lloyd said the Suns won't win a game this year and they're the worst list in 100 years. And Tony Cochrane turned around and asked how Essendon was going. So, that's just good news. I feel like the media is finally sort of opening up to us. We saw some stuff last night on Fox Sports. It seems like they're slowly opening, and I think this could be the start for the Suns to stop that negative press in the media as we finally look to gain some respect.
Yeah, I don't mind being underdogs every single week.
No, but
I'm not a gambling man, but we could have made a bit of coin on Sunday.
Well, we certainly could. If the Suns keep up their determination and their belief, that they've shown in the last 2 weeks, who knows what we can do. And as long as they bring that to every game, I think Suns supporters and non-Suns fans around the globe would be very happy with the performances. All right, well, that does us for the day. Thanks for tuning in, listening to the GC Sunscast. We love talking footy, and we hope to hear from you guys in future episodes. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Yep, and g'day to all of the players' mums. I know there's plenty of you following us on Facebook and players' families as well. Just a bit of a shout out, first win of the year, and we really appreciate your support.
Fantastic. Thank you. Go Suns.
Go Suns.